Our IWCS webinar series event is hosted by the International Cable and Connectivity Symposium. I am Ed Fenton, a cable industry advisor working with the IWCS team. As Sammy said, if you have questions, please use the Q&A box on the bottom right of your screen to post a question anonymously. If you wish to contact the presenter or IWCS after the presentation, you will be given the contact points at the end of the webinar. Please note that IWCS does not distribute the presentation slides from either our conference sessions or these webinars. However, please feel free to contact the presenter directly, and they will respond individually to you. Today, we welcome Dave Kiddoo, Executive Director of the Communications, Cable, and Connectivity Association, based in Washington, D.C., USA, who will be presenting his paper on the serious fire safety implications of counterfeit cables installed in building network infrastructure. Dave Kiddoo is the Executive Director of the Communications, Cable, and Connectivity Association. CCCA is a nonprofit association comprised of leading manufacturers, distributors, and material suppliers who are committed to serve as a major resource for well-researched, fact-based information on the technologies and issues vital to the structured cabling industry. Prior to his current assignments, David spent over 20 years as the Global Business Manager for wiring cable insulation and sheathing products at Alpha Gary Corporation, a division of Mexichem SAB, headquartered in Leominster, Mass. He concentrated on strategic business planning, marketing and communications, evolving wiring cable industry performance and sustainability standards, as well as product development. Before joining Alpha Gary, David was the wiring cable marketing manager for Auzimont USA. He also had 11 years of experience with the DuPont Company in manufacturing, technical service, market and product development, and sales of wiring cable materials. David is a graduate of Bucknell University in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, with a degree in chemical engineering. Dave, we welcome you to present at today's IWCS webinar series event.
Thank you, Ed, for that kind introduction, and also I would like to express my great appreciation to IWCS for allowing me to present this webinar series today, and also participating in the IWCS 2016 conference in Providence, Rhode Island. This is a very important subject, and it's something that's part of our everyday life in all types of products that we purchase in discount stores and on the internet. The risk of purchasing counterfeit cables or counterfeit products in general is very widespread. I think for those of us who travel around different cities like New York and Times Square, you see a lot of products on the street there. You have counterfeit Gucci bags, Rolex watches, many things that you can purchase for vastly discounted prices. And with that, the monies that are taken from people that buy those products likely end up in very dubious hands and in fact, criminal hands, to be precise. So this is an important subject, and I appreciate everyone who has joined in today to listen to the webinar. I was at a conference a few years ago on this subject, and it was a global conference with quite a few different law enforcement agencies. And we heard one presenter saying that as much as 25% of commerce in the world, 25% is counterfeit or not made to standard practice and legitimate product. That's a lot, and that's quite a scary situation. So we're going to focus on communications cable, counterfeit and non-compliant communications cable in this today. So what we'd like to do is, first of all, to set the stage, I'd like to show a video that really describes the impact of counterfeit cables. Clearly, this is an important issue for both network performance and safety. So what I'd like to do is cue up the video and have you see some serious results.
4-pair twisted pair communications cables snake through buildings you work or live in every day. They run between floors and from room to room. There are performance standards and, more importantly, safety codes that regulate the manufacture of these cables. It's in everyone's best interest that if a fire breaks out in a building, these communications cables don't act like a fuse and carry fire all over the building. The sad truth is, there are cable manufacturers that are manufacturing communications cable that does not pass fire and life safety building codes. However, they are labeling this cable with all the markings you might expect to find on properly constructed cables. This is a Steiner tunnel at an Underwriters Laboratories facility. This tunnel allows for control fire tests of communications cables. In the first test, a Category 5E control cable that is known to be properly constructed is loaded into the tunnel. Fire is applied to one end of the cable, and technicians measure how far the fire travels down the cable. With this control cable, the fire travels 1.5 feet within 2.5 minutes. Then it doesn't travel any further down the cable, even though the fire continues hitting the end of the cable for 20 minutes. The smoke from this burn only reaches an optical density of 0.22, and there is less smoke as time goes on. Both the fire and smoke tests are well within the National Fire Protection Association requirements. Now let's look at a counterfeit Category 5E cable that claims to be compliant with all safety codes. This cable was easily purchased on the open market. However, it is missing the required UL holographic label. The fire is started on one end of the cable and begins moving rapidly. In less than 6 minutes, the fire has spread down the full length of the tunnel. So the test is stopped. The counterfeit cable has failed spectacularly. In less than 1 minute, the optical density of the smoke is off the charts. When the test is finished, there is little to nothing left of the counterfeit non-compliant cable. Much of it has burnt completely to ash. The same company sells a Category 6 cable. The Steiner tunnel test results were nearly identical, with the flame propagating the full length of the tunnel and lots of smoke filling the tunnel. So the difference between properly manufactured cables that have been UL tested and certified versus counterfeit cables utilizing non-compliant cable designs and materials is clear. Installing this counterfeit cable potentially opens up building owners and contractors to liability issues, as it can lead to unacceptable levels of fire propagation through a building over the communications cabling system. Make sure you are buying reliable communications cable and not a fuse. Go to the CCCA's website to find out how you can be sure you are buying compliant cables.
Okay, so you can see clearly that counterfeit cables create a very catastrophic event in terms of fire safety, but also in terms of network performance. So what I'd like to do is, I know Ed gave us a good introduction here on CCCA, but this presentation was an accumulation of input from a wide variety of leading companies throughout our cable and connectivity supply chain. And our association is designed to address many aspects of quality, design, environmental, and other key issues in communications cable infrastructure. Our goal simply is to educate the supply chain on various important issues to our industry. And in this particular case, to actually try and help alert the supply chain and to make sure that all of the installers and contractors and and Commerce is complying with the applicable fire safety codes transmission standards because it is, in fact, the law, not only in the United States, but around the world. Codes that are adopted into law in each region, like the United States, which is the National Electrical Code, or also in the European Union, which has its construction products regulation. As you know, network cabling infrastructure connects the entire building. It can be office to office, horizontally, or from floor to floor vertically. And so clearly we need to make sure that cabling infrastructure has the right safety, installation, and design characteristics to prevent the spread of flame and the generation of smoke. The cabling industry, and particularly the communications cabling industry, is a very codes and standards intensive industry. And we have various different codes which are in fact mandatory and are adopted into law. And for fire safety requirements, you'll know the term listed. Cables are listed to these different requirements in the National Electrical Code in the United States. There are also voluntary performance requirements. They're termed voluntary as different standards for transmission and other aspects of network communications. But in fact, they're required, particularly in critical environments, and to any user or business, they certainly would be required. But they are not mandatory by law. So the important part of our National Electrical Code in the United States is that all cables, communications cables, shall be listed, and it's clearly stated in the National Electrical Code, and that third-party certifications are required. And again, as I mentioned, this is now also required in the European Union as part of their standards, and in July of 2017, it will be a mandatory requirement for the higher level fire performance cables to be certified by third parties as part of the construction products regulation. So the two prominent third-party verification entities in the United States happens to be Underwriters Laboratories and ETL, Intertech Testing Services. And these are nationally recognized testing laboratories, and they are widely known, particularly in electrical codes and standards, as the certification bodies. So the language actually in the code says any organization acceptable to the authority having jurisdiction, but you'll be aware predominantly by companies such as Underwriters Laboratories. So let's have a little bit of a background here on what bad cable looks like. Let's go back to school and learn some important issues to look out for. The packaging or cables are required to show authorized third-party marks. Simply typing the letters UL or words to label the cable to certain performance characteristics like CMP, plenum rated, or category 6 is insufficient. Those aren't, anyone can put those on labels of boxes and cables. So it's important to know that, there are ways to verify whether or not the words that are being used to describe the cable are in fact legitimate. Basically, if there are unauthorized marks, the cable should be considered as counterfeit. And UL certainly protects their mark and their property rights, and they will go out and create seizures and legal and criminal consequences if appropriate. Also, there are strategies now where the packaging of the cable does not show any UL mark on the packaging or the labels of the cable themselves. This strategy of not reporting UL or ETL is now becoming a widespread strategy for counterfeiters, so that UL or ETL won't come after them and claim misuse of their mark. But they might as well be saying, we are breaking the law. It is because it is a requirement by the National Electrical Code in the USA, particularly, that it is a law requirement that they need to be listed by a third-party verified body. So UL, in particular, actually has a holographic label that is required to be on each and every box of cable that you purchase. So if you do not see the holographic label on each and every box, then you should consider the cable as non-compliant to the National Electrical Code. And again, it's an indication that there is a problem with the cable inside the box. The packaging also is sometimes does have the authorized marks, including holographic labels and other markings, but it is possible that cable inside could be non-compliant. It is possible, it does happen from time to time with manufacturer defect, albeit very rarely, but this does happen occasionally, which is the real benefit of third-party follow-up service and surveillance, because if they run their routine tests on cables and find a problem, they certainly work with the manufacturer to take all appropriate corrective actions. Some of the common characteristics of cable bearing counterfeit marks or non-compliant cable, certainly a very low price, below the market norms, is a key indicator. Essentially, normal competition of up to 15%, maybe 20% off for high volumes. That's normal everyday practice and good competitive situations. But anything beyond that 15 to 20% mark should be considered suspect. And you can go online to countless websites and other portals and find vastly discounted infrastructure products, cable and connectivity products, and that should be your first clue. But also, poor design, not consistent with what you would expect, and other issues such as copper clad aluminums, which we'll talk about in a minute. Those are all indications that you are dealing with a product that is substandard and counterfeit. Most of the common characteristics also include private labeled unfamiliar brands from offshore manufacturers. You see this a lot on Amazon and eBay and thousands of other discount websites where they're using very unfamiliar brands. They use poor English to describe their brands. They're only supplied through websites. There's really no information on who manufactured the product, and certainly other indications that they are in violation of building codes. And certainly, if these cables are purchased and are non-compliant and are installed, then there are certainly an exposure not only to the performance and safety of the building, but also legal exposure and liability for the contractor or installer. So it's very important that we do everything we can on our procurement of cabling and connectivity infrastructure products to make sure that they are, in fact, compliant. Also, counterfeiters will counterfeit everything. They will, that includes packaging. They will modify the conductors, the insulations, the jackets, other components of the cables, but even the packaging. And one CCCA member, Relex, has had this happen on a very common basis, which is frustrating for them. But we can see that the counterfeiters will stop at nothing to take every cost out that they possibly can. CCCA, for its part, is conducting quite a few surveillance programs and working with various entities to identify where problems exist, although it is whack-a-mole out there. You go out and find one, and you pursue that, and they may shut down or change their words, and they'll just move over to another website or another portal. So it is akin to whack-a-mole. But we're looking at a number of different types of communication cabling systems, category cables, patch cords, fiber optic assemblies, and jumpers as well. So we're making every effort to coordinate with other associations and do the surveillance as best we can. Our success rate is virtually 100%, we have to say, based on the things we just talked about. If you look for the common traits of counterfeit cables, you can pretty much assure yourself that there is a problem one way or another. So our success rate has been good in finding and identifying counterfeit and fraudulent cables. And so we've actually, the video that you saw was a plenum-rated cable, and obviously we're working with the third-party testing facilities every time we find problems. But as you can see with these results, the results at the left side of each of these charts really show that there is excessive and catastrophic failures typically seen for both flame spread and smoke generation in counterfeit cables. Just hideously damaging and potentially fatal repercussions coming out of results such as this, if they are in fact installed in our buildings and commercial applications. There were quite a few fires back in the 70s and 80s that were predominant in identifying these issues as cabling and network infrastructures began to take root with the advent of internet and email and other aspects of communications. This one showing is a hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada, that was a fire that started in the kitchen and then spread throughout the building. And in fact, in this particular case, and there were a number of examples like this, where the firefighters actually thought that they had the fire under control in one area of the building, and then as much as an hour or so later, the fire would start again on an upper floor or somewhere in the building, and basically, the infrastructure components like cabling acted as fuses, and they were installed in hidden voids and caused real problems, obviously, for the safety of evacuating people and even firefighters. So this is what generated a lot of the safety requirements and code requirements in the United States and throughout the world. So again, just to summarize and recap, certainly if you see cables that are significantly lower in cost than normal competition, and you have unknown brands and suspicious advertising and false claims, and the packaging and the cables aren't properly labeled appropriately with holographic labels, etc., then you need to be concerned. And the issue of copper-clad aluminum conductors has now become prevalent on many of these sites that are selling counterfeit cable. And copper-clad aluminum, typically you can tell cable boxes that are so much lighter than they should be because, again, you've got aluminum and you just have a basic copper covering on the aluminum, if that. But basically, this is a product that is absolutely not allowed, not permitted per the National Electrical Code. And in communications network cables, various websites are actually proudly stating that they're using CCA or copper-clad aluminum conductors. And again, they might as well simply be stating, we are breaking the law, because they are not allowed per the National Electrical Code. And again, shame on you if you happen to go ahead and purchase these cables if they've, in fact, even if they've told you that they're using copper-clad aluminum. So it's important that you make sure that you do not use it. And there have been several examples that we've actually generated some excellent case studies on the CCCA website at an elementary school in New England and also at a facility in New York, where very serious consequences occurred and serious repercussions were as a result. The good news is that some of these perpetrators are in fact caught and are pursued by bodies such as Underwriters Laboratories. Again, unfortunately, it's like whack-a-mole, and it's hard to stay up with every instance of counterfeit cable. But the good news is at the end, after much investigation and verification of the problem, organizations such as UL issue public notices and warn users for using these cables or to not use these cables, and also in many instances require recalls. And in fact, in one case that was pursued through Home Depot, there was a serious recall, and then cables had to be removed from buildings that had already been installed. So it's a very serious consequence. But the third-party verification bodies are doing their level best to do the surveillance and find these criminals. And again, a lot of important investigative work is continuing every day. And for CCCA's part, CCCA is actually cooperating with UL. We're doing the best we can to communicate and educate and provide tools to the supply chain to verify that the cables and infrastructure components are in fact compliant. On our website, you can see a webinar series that will help you understand the problem and also how to avoid your legal liabilities. Because again, if you are the one that installed that cable, you are responsible, not the manufacturer. You are responsible for installing that. So it behooves you to make sure that you are installing good compliant cable. So I encourage you to go to the CCCA website. There's also an app that we have on both Apple and Google platforms that will also I'll give you some good advice on what to look for and how to work with UL to verify cables. Also, we're working very strongly with groups. This picture actually shows a meeting with Interpol, but we've also had strong conversations with Homeland Security, the FBI, court agents, and inspectors to help them identify and prosecute these issues. So again, what you can do, clearly long-term due diligence. You need to check every incoming inventory of products that you purchase and just verify that they are in fact legitimate. We are working with media and different educational events. We monitor the UL public notices. And if you're purchasing an unknown brand, simply require written proof of those listings and verifications. Every supplier must have those verification letters, and anyone who refuses to provide you those ought to be called into question as well. So again, I want to thank you for listening. I will leave you with this. Many times I am asked, who are the bad guys? Why don't we provide a list of the bad guys when we identify them? Well, all I can say is that you can find the bad guys. They're easily found. Just Google Cat 6 cable, and you'll find thousands of websites, and you'll find portals on Amazon and eBay and other places. And then you begin to see the prices and all of the issues that we talked about. So unfortunately, if we list the bad guys, that answer tends to inspire lawsuits. And we certainly don't want to do that. We've had one instance of that already. So really all we can say is, who the good guys are. And, basically buy brands that you know and are well respected and heard in the industry. And again, just be very diligent on the products that you purchase to minimize your liability, and most importantly, the safety and performance of the building. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. At this time, we will ask as many questions from the attendees as time permits. And I'll start with this first question. How do you verify that the UL holographic labels are legitimate for the specific manufacturer and are not counterfeit themselves?
That's a great question, because again, these bad guys are counterfeiting everything, and of course they're going to try to counterfeit the holographic label and make it look as close to the label as possible. There are components within a legitimate holographic label that can be seen by certain elements and visual techniques. So there's actually, if you look at a holographic label, there's a box that has different codes inside of it that you can't see with the naked eye. And those now, because of the problems of counterfeiting holographic labels, UL is now actually modifying those images for each company and providing new inventories of the holographic labels for each and every box. They're replacing them on a quarterly basis, or even more often in areas where there are problems. So again, you have to look very closely and verify that the label itself is in fact legitimate.
Okay. Second question, what should we do if an internet source or distributor will not provide documentation of either a UL or ETA listing?
Yeah, and again, UL and ETL provide the certifications to the manufacturer. And if the listing is actually through a third party, a distributor, for example, those documents are available and should be provided as verification of compliance. And again, it's a requirement of the code. So by law, they need to show that. And if they just say, in an email that they are compliant, they're just basically saying, dear customer, trust me. But you should be able to get those from UL. And if you have any questions at all, contact the listing or verification body, whether it be UL or ETL. Contact them and ask them for verification of that company and that product. That is available both online and through phone call.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Has there been enough of an investigation to diagnose whether the problems are rooted in the wrong polymers being used, faulty or deficient construction or missing components, such as shields, or in deficient or missing FR systems?
Absolutely. And as you can imagine, these cables are being produced with absolutely lowest cost in mind. So, the important engineering balance that all of these cables have is not only to allow for the transmission of data and video at the highest speeds possible and at highest levels of transmission, but they also contain flame retardants and smoke suppressants, and the actual design of the cable itself, whether it be thicknesses of materials, thicknesses of the jacket or insulation or crosswebs or any of the other components, even rip cords and other things, have a serious impact on the fire safety performance of these cables. So what's happening is people are using materials, very substandard materials and components that will not allow that cable to pass the burn, the fire tests that are required. So yes, and as we saw, they're going to counterfeit every aspect of that cable design as well as the packaging. And this applies to both copper and optical fiber infrastructures.
Okay. Next question. Many websites actually claim that their category cables use copper-clad aluminum conductors. Why isn't someone targeting them and shutting them down?
Exactly, and that's a very serious problem. I think what many of these counterfeiters and bad guys are doing is they're telling you that they're copper-clad aluminum, or they're not telling you that they're UL or ETL certified. And by doing that, it's really buyer beware. It's really, up to you to know that those two issues are in fact violating the law. Again, shame on you if you purchased that cable and it told you that it's copper-clad aluminum and it did not tell you that it was UL certified. Then you buy the cable anyway because you're getting a great discount. Oh, look, 50% off. Lots of buyers out there will think they're doing a good deed for their company and saving their company money and helping fulfill contracts with discounted cables. But seriously, the liability of doing that is very serious. Obviously, from a safety and performance aspect. And certainly your company, if it is found out that you've done that, then it's on you and your reputation and liabilities. So again, these are tactics now, and very interesting tactics that are being perpetrated by the bad guys. So beware.
Okay. Next question. Why aren't government agencies like the Consumer Product Safety Commission going after these counterfeit cables more?
Well, that's a very good point, and certainly we try to educate and spend time with those government agencies to identify the problem. The issue is, like I said at the very beginning, there's so many consumer products out there, branded products, and just to throw out names, Gucci bag or a Rolex watch. But more importantly, baby products, for example, or toys and things like that is in the realm of consumers and obviously affect mainstream people very directly. And so that's where they spend their energy. Things like wiring cable and communications cable infrastructure that are behind walls and above ceilings. they're not sexy enough for any other word to use. They're not in the mainstream, and that's the responsibility of us as an industry, is make it mainstream, because seriously, the impact in a building is catastrophic. In an airport or in a public facility, a movie theater, or any office building, it's very important that network infrastructure has the highest levels of fire safety and performance. And critical mission critical facilities, military and other activities that are important to public safety, we need to verify that all these systems are compliant and work.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question. I'll just encourage listeners to go ahead and ask a question. I'm going to do one more that I'm shown listed here. How come there are no certification requirements for patch cords sold at stores like Best Buy or other retail outlets?
Yeah, that's something actually that CCCA is working on right now with Underwriters Laboratories. It's a big problem because patch cords and cable assemblies typically are manufactured by various different entities that are very dependent upon manual labor, and a lot of different companies tend to be involved in the connectorization of cables. But there just has not been that verification in many cases, and we hear it all the time at different conferences and trade shows, where the mission-critical users and the engineers responsible for data centers and other places, the weakest link is the patch cord. And you can have a very sophisticated, very costly network and data center be totally defeated by patch cords. And if you go into Best Buy and you pick up a Cat6 patch cord, that's basically all it says, CAT6. But you have no verification whether that actually meets those requirements of Category 6 transmission. So we're working on that right now, and I know Underwriters Laboratories are working on a verification program so that we can bring that to facilities, the retail outlets, to have them specify to verify they are, in fact, getting good operating and legitimate patch cords.
Great. Fantastic. At this point, I'd like to conclude the Q&A period. I do want to address one question which came in from one of our participants. The question asked, can you replay the flame testing videos, please? We are going to have to conclude our presentation today, but I do want to encourage this listener or participant to contact IWCS or the presenter, because this content will become available as explained shortly. So unfortunately, we can't completely replay a video, but it can be available if you make that contact. Thank you, Dave, for presenting this very interesting and important topic today. Please note the contact points being shown should you wish to contact Dave after today's event. Each of these IWCS webinar series presentation events are recorded and will be archived on the IWCS.org website. It normally takes up to 2 weeks for these to be posted. The IWCS webinar series will conduct presentation events on a monthly basis. Webinar events will take place on the third Friday of each month at 10:30 a.m. Eastern USA time. Our next scheduled webinar event will be on Friday, February 17th at 10:30 a.m. Eastern USA time. Each of you will be receiving an announcement for the event a few weeks prior. Please feel free to share our announcements with your colleagues so they can join in and register as well. For over 65 years, the IWCS International Cable and Connectivity Symposium has been the recognized leader showcasing new technologies in cable and connectivity products, processes, and applications. Our next annual international conference will take place on Sunday, October 8th through Wednesday, October 11th, 2017, at the Gaylord Palms in Orlando, Florida, USA. In addition, the inaugural regional UL and IWCS China 2017 Cable and Connectivity Symposium will take place on Tuesday, April 25th through Thursday, April 27th, 2017, at the Marriott City Center in Shanghai, China. Please visit our website at iwcs.org for more event details. In just a moment, you will see a brief survey so that you can provide us your feedback and comments on today's event so that we can further improve this webinar series for you. Thank you for participating, and this concludes today's event.